Your value is not determined by the opinions of others. Let me say that again. Your value is not determined by the opinions of others. This is perhaps the most liberating truth you will ever discover in your lifetime. Too many people today are living as prisoners. Not prisoners behind physical bars, but prisoners of perception. They are locked in invisible cells constructed by the opinions, expectations, and judgments of others. They wake up every morning seeking validation. They go to sleep every night measuring their worth by the approval they received. This is not living. This is existing in the shadow of fear. I want to speak directly to your spirit today. There is a power inside of you that transcends all external validation. There is a worth embedded in your very existence that no person can diminish unless you surrender the keys to your value. I remember meeting a young woman who had achieved remarkable success by traditional standards. Advanced degrees, prestigious position, financial stability, all the external markers of achievement. Yet behind closed doors, she confessed that she felt empty, constantly seeking the next approval, the next recognition, living in fear that someone would discover she wasn't enough. Her entire identity was built on a foundation of sand, the shifting opinions of others. This is the tragedy of our time. We have become experts at building impressive external lives while neglecting the internal foundation of self-value. And here's the danger. When you don't know your value, you will give discounts. You will settle. You will compromise who you truly are for the temporary relief of acceptance. What would happen if you woke up tomorrow completely free from the need for others' approval? What decisions would you make differently? What dreams would you pursue that you've been postponing until you receive permission or validation? What relationships would you release or redefine? The journey to authentic living begins with a single revolutionary decision. The decision to never again let people control your value. Our society has masterfully constructed a system where worth is measured externally. From our earliest years, we are trained to seek gold stars, good grades, and the approving nod of authority figures. We learn to perform for praise and modify our authentic expression to avoid rejection. This conditioning follows us into adulthood where the metrics simply change. Now it's job titles, income levels, social media likes, and the approval of peers. We become actors in our own lives, constantly scanning the environment to ensure we're meeting expectations. We shape-shift depending on who's in the room. We filter our words to fit the acceptable narrative. Let me ask you, who are you when no one is watching? Who are you when there is no audience to perform for, no validation to receive? Many people can't answer this question because they've spent so long performing that they've lost touch with their authentic core. The pursuit of external validation is exhausting because it's insatiable. There will always be someone who disapproves. There will always be a higher bar to reach. There will always be shifting standards to meet. It's like trying to fill a bucket with a hole in the bottom. No amount of pouring will ever make it full. I spoke with a successful executive who confessed that despite reaching the pinnacle of his career, he lived in constant fear. I feel like an imposter, he said. I'm afraid that one day everyone will realize I'm not as capable as they think. So I work longer hours, sacrifice my health and relationships just to maintain this image. This man had sacrificed his authentic life at the altar of external validation. The most painful revelation comes when you realize that after years of seeking approval, you built a life that doesn't truly resonate with who you are. You've accumulated achievements that don't bring fulfillment. You've surrounded yourself with people who know only the version of you that you've presented for acceptance. This is the trap. We believe that if we can just get enough people to validate our worth, we will finally feel worthy. But external validation is a mirage in the desert. The closer you get, the further it recedes. The truth is revolutionary. No amount of external validation can create internal worth. It must flow in the opposite direction. When you connect with your intrinsic value, you no longer need constant approval from others. You become unshakable in the face of criticism. You develop the courage to stand in your truth even when it's unpopular. Breaking free from this trap begins with awareness. Start noticing when your sense of worth rises and falls based on others' responses. Observe how you may modify your authentic expression to gain approval. This awareness is the first crack in the prison walls. Here's a truth that will transform your existence. Your value was established before anyone had the opportunity to evaluate you. Your worth is not earned through performance or achievement. It is inherent in your very existence. Think about this. The most precious things in our world have intrinsic value. Diamonds don't become valuable when someone appreciates them. They are valuable by their very nature. Their worth is discovered, not created by external opinion. You are the same. Your value is not waiting to be created through the approval of others. It is waiting to be discovered and expressed by you. This is why the opinions of others are irrelevant to your actual worth. They may influence how you feel about yourself if you allow them to, but they cannot alter your intrinsic value. People's opinions are simply their interpretations based on their limited perspective, filtered through their own insecurities and experiences. When you truly understand this, rejection loses its sting. Criticism becomes information rather than identity. Disapproval becomes merely a difference in perspective rather than a statement about your worth. I once spoke with a pioneering researcher who had developed a groundbreaking theory that was initially rejected by the entire scientific community. For years, colleagues dismissed her work, sometimes mockingly. When I asked how she persevered through such overwhelming rejection, she said something profound. I never confused their opinion of my work with the value of my work. I knew what I had discovered was valuable, whether anyone recognized it at that moment or not. This is the mindset of someone who understands predetermined value. She didn't need external validation to sustain her sense of worth or the worth of her contribution. Your unique combination of gifts, perspective, and potential is unrepeatable. There has never been anyone exactly like you, and there never will be again. This alone establishes your inherent value beyond what any person or system can evaluate. The challenge is learning to separate your performance from your value. Your performance will vary. You will succeed in some areas and struggle in others. You will have days of brilliance and days of failure. But through it all, your fundamental worth remains constant. When you anchor to this truth, you develop an unshakable core that no external circumstances can disturb. This doesn't mean arrogance or a lack of growth. In fact, those who are secure in their intrinsic value are more able to receive constructive feedback without defensiveness. They can admit mistakes without shame. They can celebrate others without feeling threatened. Their sense of worth isn't on the line with every interaction. Living from intrinsic value requires courage. The courage to stand alone when necessary. There will be moments when honoring your authentic worth means walking a solitary path, at least temporarily. Throughout history, every individual who created meaningful change first had to stand against the prevailing opinions of their time. They had to believe in their vision and value when few others did. Consider the countless instances where someone saw a better way, proposed an innovative solution, or challenged an unjust system. They almost always faced resistance, ridicule, and rejection before vindication. What sustained them was not external validation, but an unshakable connection to their intrinsic worth and purpose. The courage to stand alone doesn't mean isolation. It means having the strength to maintain your authenticity even when it would be easier to conform. It means speaking your truth even when silence would be more comfortable. It means making choices aligned with your values even when those choices are unpopular. I've witnessed this courage in people from all walks of life. The employee who respectfully raises ethical concerns while colleagues remain silent. The parent who establishes healthier boundaries despite family criticism. The student who pursues their authentic passion rather than the path of prestige. These acts require the courage to temporarily stand apart from the crowd. This courage comes from understanding a fundamental truth. The pain of betraying yourself is ultimately greater than the pain of disappointing others. When you compromise your authentic value to gain approval, you create an internal division that no amount of external validation can heal. The price of conformity is high. Each time you surrender your authentic expression for acceptance, you reinforce the false belief that your worth is dependent on others' approval. Each compromise chips away at your connection to your intrinsic value. Over time, these compromises accumulate into a life of quiet desperation. Externally successful perhaps, but internally disconnected. Finding strength in your authentic self begins with small acts of courage. Speaking honestly when it would be easier to agree. Setting a boundary when it would be simpler to comply. Making a choice aligned with your values when no one would know the difference. Each of these moments builds your capacity to stand in your truth. Remember that your capacity to contribute meaningfully to the world is directly related to your willingness to stand in your authentic value. The more you compromise to fit in, the more you dilute the unique contribution only you can make. The paradox is beautiful. The more you develop the courage to stand alone in your truth, the more you attract authentic connections with others doing the same. Your courage creates permission for others to live more authentically as well. If you've spent years allowing others to define your worth, reclaiming your intrinsic value is a process that requires intention and practice. It is not accomplished through a single decision, but through consistent recommitment to your authentic self. The first step is awareness. Begin paying attention to when your sense of worth rises or falls based on external responses. Notice when you feel the need to prove yourself, to impress, or to seek validation. These moments are valuable signals that you've temporarily disconnected from your intrinsic value. The second step is challenging the false beliefs that sustain external validation. When you hear yourself thinking, if they don't approve, I'm not enough, pause and question that assumption. Replace these thoughts with affirmations of your inherent worth. My value exists independent of anyone's ability to recognize it. Setting healthy boundaries is essential in reclaiming your value. Boundaries are statements of self-worth. They communicate what you will and will not accept in your life based on your inherent value. Begin by identifying where you've allowed others to devalue you through their words, expectations, or treatment. A boundary might sound like, I understand you have strong opinions about my choice, but I've made my decision and I'm not seeking approval. Or I appreciate feedback that helps me grow, but I don't accept criticism that attacks my character. These statements affirm that while you remain open to others, you are the final authority on your worth. The discipline of self-affirmation is powerful in reclaiming your value. This isn't about empty positive thinking, but about consciously reconnecting with the truth of your inherent worth. Take time daily to acknowledge your intrinsic value, independent of your performance or others' opinions. Remind yourself of your unique gifts, perspective, and potential contribution. Another powerful practice is surrounding yourself with value-affirming relationships. Seek connections with people who recognize and respect your inherent worth. These relationships aren't based on performance or utility, but on mutual recognition of each other's intrinsic value. They provide a mirror reflecting your authentic worth back to you. One of the most transformative practices is contribution based on authentic value. When you share your gifts, not to prove your worth, but because you recognize the value of your contribution, you strengthen your connection to your intrinsic worth. Ask yourself, how can I contribute today from a place of authentic value rather than a need for validation? The journey of reclaiming your value will have challenges. There will be days when old patterns resurface. There will be relationships that resist your emerging authenticity. There will be internal resistance as you confront years of conditioning. These challenges aren't failures, but opportunities to strengthen your commitment to living from intrinsic worth. Remember that reclaiming your value is not selfish, it's essential. Only when you are firmly established in your intrinsic worth can you make your fullest contribution to others. Only when you're free from the need for constant validation can you serve with authentic power. When you establish your life on the foundation of intrinsic worth, everything changes. You experience a freedom that few people ever know. The freedom to be authentically yourself without apology or explanation. This freedom manifests in every area of life. In your work, you pursue excellence not to prove your worth, but because excellence is the natural expression of your inherent value. You choose paths based on authentic calling rather than prestige. You offer your unique contribution without diminishing it or exaggerating it. In relationships, living from intrinsic worth transforms your connections. You no longer use relationships to fill a void of worthiness. You don't seek in others what you should be providing for yourself. This creates the possibility for authentic intimacy, being fully seen and accepted, not for what you do, but for who you are. You develop the capacity to set healthy boundaries without guilt. You can say no without explanation when something doesn't align with your values. You can walk away from situations and relationships that require you to compromise your authentic expression. You can remain unmoved by manipulation because your worth isn't on the negotiating table. Perhaps most importantly, living from intrinsic worth allows you to embrace your unique purpose without distraction. When you're constantly seeking validation, your energy is divided. Part of you is focused on the task at hand, while another part is scanning for approval and adjusting your approach accordingly. When you're anchored in intrinsic worth, all of your energy is available for your authentic purpose. I've witnessed the transformation in people who make this shift. A teacher who stopped seeking approval from administrators and reconnected with her authentic passion for education, her classroom became electric with engagement. A business leader who released the need to impress colleagues and began making decisions aligned with his values, his team's trust and performance soared. A parent who stopped parenting for the approval of others and began responding to the authentic needs of their children, their family relationships flourished. Living from intrinsic worth also transforms how you handle criticism and failure. When your worth isn't dependent on perfect performance, you can receive feedback without defensiveness. You can fail without shame. You can learn and grow without the paralyzing fear of judgment, because a mistake doesn't diminish your value. Consider how differently you approach challenges when your worth isn't at stake. You become willing to take meaningful risks because failure no longer threatens your identity. You can pursue audacious goals without the paralyzing fear of falling short. The question shifts from, what if I fail and people think less of me? To, what growth and contribution are possible if I attempt this? This internal shift creates an extraordinary external difference. Your very presence becomes a permission-giving force that allows others to step into their authentic expression. You no longer need to explicitly teach these principles. Your way of being demonstrates them powerfully. People sense the difference. They notice how you remain unshaken by criticism. They observe how you make decisions from internal conviction rather than external pressure. They recognize the genuine confidence that comes not from achievement, but from connection to intrinsic value. The energy you once expended on managing others' perceptions now becomes available for creative expression, deep connection, and meaningful contribution. Think about it. How much mental and emotional energy do you currently spend wondering what others think of you? Imagining their judgments, rehearsing your responses, adjusting your behavior to gain approval. This energy is your birthright, meant to fuel your authentic purpose, not to be drained away by the endless pursuit of validation. When you live from intrinsic worth, you break generational patterns of validation seeking. You model for your children, colleagues, friends, and community what it means to be anchored in unshakable value. In a world drowning in insecurity and comparison, you demonstrate an alternative, living confidently from the inside out rather than desperately from the outside in. This way of living creates a powerful legacy. Beyond any achievement or recognition, your greatest contribution is modeling what it means to live from authentic worth. In a world where so many are imprisoned by the opinions of others, your freedom becomes a beacon showing what's possible. Imagine a community where each person operates from intrinsic worth rather than external validation. Innovation would flourish because people wouldn't fear failure. Relationships would deepen because authentic connection would replace strategic impression management. Collaboration would thrive because people wouldn't feel threatened by others' success. This vision begins with individuals, with you choosing daily to live from intrinsic rather than assigned worth. Each time you express your authentic self without seeking validation, you create ripples that extend far beyond what you can see. As we conclude, I want to leave you with a vision of what's possible when you fully embrace your unshakable value. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning with a profound, unshakable knowledge of your worth, not a temporary feeling, but a bone-deep knowing that your value is established beyond anyone's opinion. How would you move through your day differently? What decisions would you make? What possibilities would open up? You would speak your truth without first calculating the risks to your likability. You would offer your gifts without diminishing them. You would pursue your authentic purpose without constantly looking over your shoulder for approval. You would set boundaries without guilt. You would love others from fullness rather than need. This is not a fantasy. This is your birthright. This is the authentic human experience before it becomes distorted by external validation. The journey to living from unshakable value begins with the decision to reclaim the authority over your worth. Right now, in this moment, you can decide that no person, no institution, no system will determine your value. You can decide that their opinions may be interesting information, but they are not the final verdict on your worth. This decision must be renewed daily through your choices, your thoughts, and your actions. Each time you feel the pull of external validation, you have an opportunity to practice returning to your intrinsic worth. Each time you're tempted to compromise your authenticity for acceptance, you can choose again. The world doesn't need more people desperately seeking validation. The world needs people who have discovered their unshakable value and are expressing it without apology. The world needs your authentic voice, your unique perspective, your courageous truth-telling. Your journey won't be perfect. There will be days when old patterns resurface. There will be situations that trigger your need for approval. But with each return to your intrinsic worth, the path becomes clearer, the voice of external validation grows quieter, your authentic expression grows stronger. I challenge you today, right now, to make the revolutionary decision that you will never again allow people to control your value. Not your family, not your friends, not your colleagues, not society, not even those you admire and respect. You will listen, you will consider, you will remain open to growth, but you will never again Surrender the authority over your worth. Consider for a moment the cumulative impact of the thousands of times you've compromised your authentic expression for acceptance, the dreams you've postponed because someone questioned their validity, the truths you've silenced because they might make others uncomfortable, the boundaries you've abandoned because maintaining them would risk rejection, the unique gifts you've downplayed to avoid standing out or being criticized. Now imagine the cumulative impact of thousands of choices made from unshakable value instead. The authentic conversations that could transform relationships, the boundaries that could redefine how others treat you, the creative risks that could unlock your fullest contribution, the dreams pursued with unwavering commitment, regardless of external validation. This shift doesn't just change your individual experience, it changes everything around you. When you stand firmly in your unshakable value, you create a field of permission that impacts everyone in your sphere of influence. You demonstrate what's possible. You create cracks in the system of external validation that imprisons so many. Your children begin to develop a stronger sense of intrinsic worth because they see it modeled in you. Your colleagues begin to speak more truthfully because you've created safety through your authentic expression. Your relationships deepen because you're no longer using them as sources of validation, but as spaces for genuine connection. The challenges will be real. When you first begin to live from unshakable value, some relationships will be uncomfortable. People who have benefited from your value-seeking behaviors may resist your emerging authenticity. Systems designed to extract your worth for external validation will attempt to pull you back into compliance. In these moments, remember that discomfort is not danger. The temporary discomfort of authentic living is infinitely preferable to the soul-deep pain of abandoning yourself for acceptance. The short-term tension in relationships is worth the long-term freedom of authentic connection. The immediate criticism from those invested in the old system is a small price for the lasting peace of living in alignment with your intrinsic worth. Your capacity to navigate these challenges grows with each choice aligned with your unshakable value. What once seemed impossible, standing firmly in your truth despite disapproval, gradually becomes your natural way of being. The voice of external validation that once shouted now becomes a whisper and eventually fades into background noise barely noticed as you move through your authentic life. The most powerful realization comes when you understand that no one can take your value from you without your permission. You alone hold the authority over your worth. Not a single person on this planet can diminish your intrinsic value unless you hand them that power. And today, you can reclaim that power once and for all. I've witnessed this transformation in countless lives. People who appeared successful by external standards, but were internally disconnected, who found the courage to reconnect with their unshakable value and step into authentic living. Without exception, they describe this shift as coming home to themselves. They speak of a peace that surpasses any achievement, a confidence that transcends any validation, a purpose that outshines any recognition. This transformation awaits you, not someday in the distant future when you've achieved enough or improved enough, but right now, in this moment. Your unshakable value isn't something you need to create or earn. It's something you need to recognize and express. When you truly embrace this decision, you will discover a freedom that few experience, the freedom to be fully, authentically yourself. And in that authentic expression of your unshakable value, you will make the contribution that only you can make. Remember, your value is not determined by the opinions of others. Your value is predetermined, unshakable, and waiting to be fully expressed through you. Never let people control your value. Never again. As you leave today, I want you to imagine a life completely liberated from the prison of others' opinions. Imagine the lightness you would feel without carrying the burden of constant validation seeking. Imagine the clarity in your decisions when they're not clouded by the fear of disapproval. Imagine the authenticity in your relationships when they're built on mutual respect rather than performance and approval. This is not merely a pleasant concept. This is the life you were designed to live. Every fiber of your being resonates with truth when you stand in your authentic value. Every relationship thrives when it's built on the foundation of intrinsic worth. Every contribution magnifies when it flows from genuine purpose rather than the need for validation. The transformation begins with awareness, develops through consistent choices, and culminates in a life of unprecedented freedom and impact. The world is filled with people living half lives, constantly adjusting their authentic expression to fit the expectations of others. But you were meant for more. You were meant to live fully, authentically, powerfully from your unshakable value. Today marks the beginning of your liberation if you choose it. Today can be the day you draw a line in the sand and declare that never again will you surrender the authority over your worth to anyone or anything external to you. Today can be the moment you reclaim the power that has always belonged to you, the power to define your value based on your inherent worth rather than external validation. The journey won't be linear. There will be moments of profound clarity when your intrinsic worth feels unshakable. There will also be moments when old patterns resurface and you find yourself seeking validation once again. These moments aren't failures. They're opportunities to practice returning to the truth of your value. With each return, your foundation grows stronger. The choice is yours. The time is now. Your unshakable value is waiting.